welcome back to another episode of Dad Mods. Today, the plan is more stuff on this thing.
Yeah, we're gonna dive right into all of the electrical work. Actually, I shouldn't say all of it. This is gonna be a two-part series. We're gonna do one of the engine bay and the sniper kit, and then the other one is gonna be the cab, relocating the battery, tail lights, all that fun jazz.
Yeah, man. So, we got a few things to show you guys. It's kind of a show and tell day. We've got a 22 circuits harness from Speedway Motors. This is one of their universals. They are really good quality wires, really good quality fuse block, all that good stuff.
Well, the awesome thing about that too is your steering column that you got is a GM plug steering column, and this will plug right into it.
Exactly.
Nice and simple.
Yeah, it really simplifies things for sure. And to give you guys a little background too, I mean, I know wiring doesn't come as easy for everybody. Some people are pretty intimidated by it.
I love it.
Do it for a living right now.
Love it.
And I worked doing 12 volt accessory stuff for years a while back, and I've fallen in love with it. So we're gonna do some kind of creative stuff to try and because these things didn't have turn signals from the factory. You either had brake lights or you had turn signals. So
Which we're gonna a weird choice to have to make.
It is kind of weird, yeah. So we're gonna make it all work. We've got a few other little things. We're using an amp kit to run a battery from the back.
Yep, we got new cables to run all of that as well. Very important to pick the correct size so you don't short anything out and burn your car down.
Yeah.
And your favorite piece that you have. You gotta tell the guys and girls about this.
Yeah, okay, so I love old cars that have push button starts. We had a Volkswagen Beetle dune buggy back in the day growing up, and it had a push button start, and I was obsessed with being able to push the button to start the car. And I've always wanted to put that into a vehicle and not just like a Honda Civic or something like that. I wanted to be able to retain that on this thing, so what we got is from Billet Automotive Buttons. It's a company in Australia. Picked up one of their buttons. It has a little spark plug on the end of it, and it lights up, and you know, when you press it, it'll light up and do the stuff, and it's momentary. So this is gonna be my push to start button.
And what's awesome about them is they're 100% custom. You can change up the design, the LED, the size. They can do engraving around the outside.
Yeah.
Whatever you need, they can do it for you.
Yeah, they'll engrave whatever you want. So it doesn't matter how filthy the thing is.
Literally whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, I'd say let's just dive into it. We'll explain each step along the way. I mean, really the first step is to just go and start kind of mapping it all out, figure out where the fuse block's gonna go, and then run wires, kind of group them together, and then
harnesses.
Do the things. All right, guys, it's time to talk about how this thing is gonna get ran. There's a lot of circuits in this thing. It's a 22 circuit, so it covers basically everything. We're talking, you've got power locks, power windows,
wipers, individual circuits for your turn signals, horn, brake switch, all of that.
It kind of covers the gamut. So if you get like the 12 circuit one, that's the bare minimum. That's something that you'd want to do in like a Model A or something. You're building a hot rod and you have very, very basic circuits. Or if you're just not worried about it and you don't have a whole lot of electronics that's going to go into anything, purpose-built race car, whatever, you basically need like the ECU powered and like...
You need to start and maybe turn the headlights on.
Yeah, and like a blower for the radiator.
Yeah.
So that's where you'd go with the smaller ones. But in this case, I want to have everything available in case I do put power locks in this thing later on, and so on and so forth. So what's amazing about the kit that we got from Speedway, these have come a long way. So I've done a couple of full chassis harnesses before, and this is by far the most comprehensive wiring harness fuse block kit that I've ever seen. Because of, like you alluded to earlier, the column plug.
Mm-hmm. So they have, where is it? That guy right there.
That's our column plug.
So yeah, this is our column plug. They've already done the hard work for you. They've already integrated the turn signals, the horn, all of that kind of stuff in the harness. So you literally just plug it in and run your wires right to whatever function you need to make it.
Yeah, here, actually. That's really thick plastic.
You need a pocket knife?
I got a blade right here.
That'll work. That doesn't look like Wesley Snipes.
That's a bad joke. Okay. So, a lot of you guys are probably already going to know what a GM plug looks like, but this is your column plug, and very simple. Plugs into, I want to say, I guess like the 80s and older, something like that. It actually might even be into the 90s. I'm not positive. GM used the same plug for the longest time. So if you're wiring anything from like a Bel Air or a old GMC pickup, square body, whatever, I'm pretty sure that this will work for it. So if you just want to ditch all the old shitty wiring, that's kind of sweet.
There you go.
So, what I've had to do in the past is I've got harnesses where I have to actually like run your power lead up to the column switches and stuff like that, and then from there you have to run individual wires that go out to the turn signals. You have to use diodes so you can set up your four-way flashers, kind of all of those little details that you have to think about. This is pleasantly surprising. It has all of that built into it. I don't know if it isolates for the four-way flashers. We haven't dug deep enough into that yet.
But they really did, for lack of better words, they kind of dumbed it down.
Yeah, like they did.
They made it as plug and play as you possibly can do it, I feel.
Yeah, for a full chassis rewire, this is pretty simple. So
yeah, it's real simple.
And they're bundled. So here's a nice thing that you'll figure out where the fuse block will go. Generally, people put them under the dash, and this, like, you can tell with the way that they've got the bundled harnesses. It's intended to go underneath a dash. So one of the first things you're going to want to do, always start at the fuse block. Never start at the accessories. Never start at the lights. Never just get the fuse block mounted where you want that thing to go, and get it final mounted too. Not just like, oh, it's going to be in this proximity.
Yeah.
Get it final mounted.
The last thing you want is 6 inches of wire you're trying to tuck and make look pretty.
Or you're short.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
you're having to build
you're
some.
Short, but
yeah, you last thing you want to be is short. So we're gonna focus on that. This is gonna be under the dash. I'm not 100% decided where because I want it to be easily accessible. It might be on top of the tunnel, and I'll have to build some kind of a cover for all of that. I don't know yet because I still have the crotch coolers in this thing. And if you're driving in the rain, the last thing in the world you want is for these old baffles that are inside it. They don't seal that great, so you don't want moisture getting in. So I'm gonna probably put it central. So this thing also covers the starter wires, headlight wiring. It has your alternator turn on exciter button, exciter circuit, all that good stuff. So it covers quite a bit. And don't hesitate to comment, use the comment section to ask questions. We'll do our best to try and help out with it. You know, wiring diagnostics are nearly impossible over the internet. You kind of have to be there to help diagnose, but we'll still try to help. But if you're starting from scratch and you just have questions, by all means, feel free to ask us. Again, this is, you do it for a living, so you've been running full harnesses for years.
Yep.
And you know, of course, I did it as a career for a little while too.
Now,
so
one other thing we're going to end up doing, because like Jake mentioned, he's not sure if he's going to be running power locks in the future or anything like that. We're going to run everything. Even if we don't think we're going to need it, we're still going to run it so it's there. What you can do is take a little bit of heat shrink, cap it off so it doesn't get corroded, and just simply don't put a fuse in that circuit. But that way, 3 years down the road, you're like, you know what, I really want power logs, or I want to do accessory lighting when the door opens or whatever. It's there.
Yeah.
It'll make your life that much easier.
That's part of why I was thinking about doing the center console setup where it would be tucked in there, because then you can have the bundles under there as well, and you can almost have the switches for like door locks right there.
That's true.
Or you can have your switches for if you do power windows, which is doable in these old things.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass because there's not a lot of webbing inside of the doors, but you can do it.
If you can chop the front end and put an S10 clip on it, you can put power windows in this.
Heck yeah, you can. And if we do that, we'll do a video on how to put some of those 12-volt accessories in.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Thing of beauty.
Yeah, so she's gonna look a little intimidating. First time you pop this out, you're gonna go, dear God, that's a lot of wiring. It is. Yeah, you're right to be a little nervous about it, especially if you never wired anything before. But the more that you look at it and the more that you compare it to your sheet, that has all of the circuits on it. You go, oh, okay, well, this is actually not that complex.
Well, one thing
tells you where to go. They're labeled.
Yeah, one thing I noticed right away is they not only numbered every single circuit and matched it to the number on the wires themselves say, this says clock battery.
Mm-hmm.
Like they physically print it out there, so they take all the guesswork out of it.
I think we've kind of showed the people enough details on this stuff.
Your fuse block is even directly labeled. They didn't just number it. It physically says, gauges or AC heat or fan. That is fantastic.
Yeah, so if you guys have a look, it even has like little standoffs on it and stuff too, so you get the right sized fasteners. So that's going to be step 2 here, is getting this kind of locked into its final resting place. But they do a lot of the work for you. When it comes to the back of a fuse block, you have a lot of exposed to hot wires back here, because you can see all of the brass. So you need nice standoffs. So it's cool. They kind of factored a lot of that into it.
Oh, this is really nice.
Yeah, and there's a quality control. It says okay, so somebody came through and checked it out. So that's cool. Speedway doing their usual thing, doing a good job.
I wonder if they all say okay, or if there's like a grading system and you just got the middle of the road one.
The one just says meh, M-E-H. This kit is pretty comprehensive. It actually has your headlight switch in it, as well as your high beams. So, depending on what you guys want to do, if you've got a column that already has a switch in it for the high beams, you might have to run something additional. But, if you want to do the floor mount one, which I guess I'm probably just going to retain it.
Yeah.
Why not? Go from there.
Give you all your relays that you need, your flashers.
One other thing here. So we're going to be doing LEDs in this thing. So standard bus flashers are load sensitive. So if you need incandescent bulbs to work with these old school flashers. So if you are swapping in LEDs, you need one that is a little more intelligent, and basically like they have a lower threshold for doing the blinking and the speeds and stuff. Because if you have LEDs on these, they're either going to be solid or they're going to blink super fast.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about. So I'm going to have to replace those with the fancy newer ones.
So not the end of the world though.
Yeah, very small detail.
That's a minor problem.
And again, we'll cover all of that as we get this thing wired up. But hey, I think the good news is we can dive in. We can start mapping it out.
We're ready to probably mount this, actually.
I think so. There. Yeah, we'll have to decide exactly where she gonna go.
Headliner. That's right above
straight onto the roof?
Straight above you, so that you just pull fuses.
So we'll just like have the fastener sticking up straight out of the roof?
Yeah, we'll just go get some coke and we'll just fill the holes on the top.
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Put a rally head scoop on to cover up the bolts so you don't see them.
A roof scoop on it? Okay, let's do this. All right, let's attach these now.
ugly Billy.
Ah, you're right. We're not showing off dad bods today.
No, we're gonna save that for the calendar.
Yeah, exactly. That's the next piece of merch we gotta make.
Where is that? Oh, so much.
A lot of wire to run up there.
Okay, so something like that. I'll put a P-clamp to get it all back here and up like so.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Sweet.
And this can get cut and ran over. We can always, there's enough wiggle room in that harness too. We can always move stuff around before we secure it.
Yeah, definitely. That was kind of my thought, is like we'll just sort of drape everything for now, and then one by one start opening up these looms.
Yeah, picking what we need.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna need another P-clamp to secure this.
Right.
I would say either here, there's a small hole here, or both.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do small P-clamp, and then we can get our shape coming down.
For sure.
At that point, it's just securing it to the tunnel and back. So yeah, let's put in a couple more P-clamps.
Awesome. Let's do that.
Okay, so this guy's gonna stay up, but this guy's gonna run down, correct? Oh no, these are all accessories. These are all running back.
Yeah, everything's going to be kind of ran together. The silly part is, though, one of those accessory wires is going to stay behind the dash, and one of them is going to run to the back of the car. And that is going to be to switch on the air suspension. You want to explain what the next step is?
We just told you. We're going to organize the wires. No, so we know this stuff's going to run back. It's kind of loosely where it's going to go, but we don't want to be tripping over it and getting it tangled up. Anybody who's ever done electrical knows wires are like headphones. The moment you look away, they just like get in a knot and get twisted, and it's a cluster. So we're just like leave those there, knowing they're going to run down the center of the car. We're going to start working with our other harnesses though, and getting those kind of out of the way, kind of ran where they need to go, all that kind of fun stuff. So we can kind of start prettying this up and have less of a cluster mess going on.
Hell yeah, dude. Alright guys, now we're on the front side of the dash here. So this funny looking plug, yeah, it's just crazy looking shape. This is actually, if you order this kit, it's for a headlight switch. So you'll want to place this wherever your headlight switch is going to be installed. In my case, I'm going to be putting it into one of these two slots on the end here. So there's going to be a little bit extra in my case. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to have it pop out the speedo hole just so I can kind of get it up and out of the way. Next, this funny green, yellow, gray plug. This one's actually your dimmer switch. So that is your headlight dimmer switch. So this guy actually goes down on the floor. So this goes between brights. Technically it's your bright switch, I'm assuming. So this one goes down to the floor. In my case, where I'm mounting the fuse block, this is actually kind of a problem that these leads aren't long enough. So I'm gonna see if I can try and make a little bit of space, a little bit of room by maybe pulling a little bit of wire through some of the other spots, because it's connected, you know, it's got one side, it's on this plug, and the other side goes to something. So you gotta see if you can try and like make up a little bit of length somewhere else. Hopefully that doesn't screw up some of the other looms, other circuits.
because these cables are ran really nicely. I will say I'm finding that the fuse block really is meant to sit in the driver's footwell, basically like, honestly, like right where this fresh air duct is. That's not going to work in my case, because I mean, you're not going to put your fuse block somewhere where, God forbid, you drive through too deep of a puddle or something like that, if water could make its way in. So keep that in mind with the shoebox. It's where you locate all this stuff is going to be a little trickier. You could, of course, do a different switch for the brights. You know, if your column had something like that in it, like the single clicking style one. But I'm still going to try and use the foot one. So we'll see how this goes. All right, your fatter loom that has this funny plug on it. This is actually your key switch one. We've got ignition accessory, we've got alternator ignition, we have 12-volt battery. So this particular plug, this is kind of sweet because they actually give you the plugs to put on the end of this so that you can plug in one of their ignition switches, which I think I'm going to end up putting that on here. First, I got to figure out where I want to put my my key switch. So in my case, I'm going to be using a traditional key switch that has like the start part on it. I was going to try and pick up another shoebox one because my one was a little cruddy, and I just figured they'd be easier to get, which the repops all sold out apparently during COVID. You can get like OEM style ones from Shoebox Central. They're really spendy. So I'm just gonna use a traditional one for now. And I'm still gonna use a push button start though. So I'm gonna show you guys how I'm gonna wire that. But I'm gonna run this into that location. Comes with the purple wire. If you've done any wiring in automotive stuff, you'll know that purple is almost always your starter wire. So I'm going to be putting a starter switch right next to the key cylinder. So I'm just going to go ahead and tuck this up here. I'm actually going to put it in the bigger hole. And this is going to run to the passenger side and out a hole in the firewall. So I haven't totally decided yet how I'm going to run the cables, the big power cables. So I'm going to run them through the inside of the car or under the car. A lot of guys actually do attach them to the underside of the car. I have my reservations about doing that. Probably still run it through the interior. And in that case, then I'm going to run everything together, starter cable included. Engine bay harness. This is the big fat one that's making a mess out of everything. And that is gonna run up through that hole right there. Okay, so it's time to do the firewall now, or rather the engine bay side. Don't stress if you're stressing out at this point because it seems like the video is going fast. It's literally because all I'm doing right now is just running the wires to running them the direction that they're gonna go. This is gonna be a messy part. You know, you're gonna have like it's gonna feel like you have rat's nest of wires everywhere. But as you start running them to their respective places, it's gonna look a little less daunting. Just along the way, try and secure some of the harnesses together. It'll make it look a little less intimidating because at least they'll be bunched together. But where I'm going to be running this is through the factory location using one of these grommets that you can get from Shoebox Central. I really like these because the hole, it's a solid rubber piece. So if you have to, you can open the hole up a little bit. And it uses the factory fastener spots. So, I mean, it beats having to plug this thing. It could be in a better spot just to hide everything because it is like right on the top of the firewall. But honestly, if you use like a nice braided loom or a split loom or something, you know, it's going to be black anyway. Or you can just wrap it. It's going to be black, so it's not going to be that noticeable. So I don't care. I'm going to do it that way. Alright, time to run them through. Our last harness, a nice big jumble. This is the cluster. So all of these wires here are going to go up to your gauge cluster. Now in a shoebox, we're dealing with 6-volt instruments, so like we'll worry about the wiring of all of that later, but right now, again, same as all these other circuits, we're just going to clip these zip ties and then have it pop out where the gauge cluster is, and then we'll kind of secure it out of the way. Okay guys, so the wires are sort of draped and they're ran into their approximate locations. What I tend to do at this point is just continue looking through the various wires and just deciding where they're going to go if they need to follow a different collection of wires. For instance, like I came across the brake switch wires. So depending on what you have, you might have a pressure brake switch, like you know, a lot of old cars have this, and older motorcycles have it, whereas new cars have a electric switch, like a physical contact switch. Those are pressure based, the ones that go on your brake lines. That's what I have. So I have the brake line style one, and what I need to do is then grab the wires that go to that switch, and I need to run those through the firewalls. That goes with that loom, that collection of wires. So that's kind of an example of how the next stages work. Is you don't want to loom anything yet. You don't want to cover or shield any wires yet, because there's so many of these instances where you need to run a wire. You go, oh, my dome light needs to follow this harness, you know? So it's like your dome light may need to go on the floor. Well, you probably want it to go backwards along with the ones that are gonna go to the back turn signals and stuff like that. So you wanna think about where all of those locations are and the wires that are gonna sort of need to follow it. And this is where the mapping really becomes important. I tend to do mine just hands-on. So as I'm running the wires, I go, oh, okay, this needs to run with these. So I grab that wire and I follow it. You might work better to look at your car and actually literally draw a map of where everything's gonna go and then where the wires will follow. That works really good. I have done that before. So my next step is to just start grouping things, making sure that they're going to the right places. Sweet. So somewhere up in the center, in here, we'll end up splicing to make our dome light wires extend. And then we'll figure out where exactly back here we'll have them come back in. It might just be nice and close, you know, like on the back side of this hump, run under here. We just have to decide what the underside of the seat looks like and if it's going to get squished. If there's any concern about it getting squished, we'll actually go into the trunk and then through the inside of this door panel here, this quarter panel. But this is looking good. Throw a couple zip ties on this just to organize. But I think we've got a couple more wires that we're gonna have to add anyway. Like the fuel pump. Alright guys, so this is cool. I think we've got all of our wires figured out that are gonna go to the back. So we've got our dome light circuit, which is spliced and extended, because it only gives you so much. It must assume that you've got a dome light kind of up above your rear view mirror. So that one's extended, and then we've got the rest of them figured out. We got one accessory wire running to the back, like we had talked about before, that's going to run air suspension. And I might do some like LED accents that kick on with the running lights, but to do that, I'll just be using the running lights as a signal wire and a relay. So I don't think I need to add anything extra to that. So that means that our harness is ready to go to the back. So this is just what I do. I'm kind of anal about this. I like to use tape first to just kind of hold the bulk of wires together before I put any kind of like loom or anything over it. So I'm going to start with that. And then I'll go and I'll see if I've got a split loom that'll work for it. Now there's a couple other materials you can use. They do have like a woven loom cover. Those are really nice. Those don't have a joint on them, so you kind of like, you push them back. It's almost like a Chinese finger trap, and that will open itself up, but you of course need all of the wires not connected. So if you're making connections already, then something like that's not going to work for you. That was too much tape. All right. Oh, and that reminds me, we actually have one more wire to run. So I am going to have to add one more to this. We have, and we'll be talking about this in the next video, we've got a fuel pump wire to run back here, and that's a part of the Sniper EFI kit. So normally you'd be running a fuel pump wire back, most likely ran off of your ignition source, because you obviously you don't want it running off of a accessory. You want this thing to run with true ignition, they say. In our case, we've got the Sniper that's going to control it, so we don't know if that means that it like cycles the fuel pump or what. Probably assumes that you're using factory wiring, so that's why it has its own dedicated wire. So I'm going to grab that harness, place it up front here, and then I'm going to just kind of lay out that wire with this whole loom and secure it to it. And that one's going to get added to this harness. We do also have two more wires to run that are for the Sniper EFI. It wants its own 12 volt and ground source run straight to the battery. So I'm going to have to run those. So grab some wiring for that. Okay, so this has got to go back to the theoretical battery spot. So
grab it.
You can kind of finagle that. I'll grab the big power cable. guys, so now that I've got the ignition installed, it's pretty sweet. We're not going to use the starter portion of this, so that final twist over, so you're like off, ignition, start, right? So we're only going to use accessory off and ignition because like we talked about in the intro, I got this cool button from Billet Automotive Buttons because I always just love the push button start on these things. So this thing is going to get plugged in right here. So I've got to drill that hole out a little bit. This is like a 28 millimeter button, and it's wired up so that it's going to be a ground side switch. So ground is going in, press the button, momentary, ground is coming out. And the LED on it, so the ring is going to light up when you press the button. So the way that this is going to work is the switch is going to send a ground pulse to the relay, and this relay is going to get switched over, and it's going to deliver the 12 volts to the starter solenoid. So these switches are only rated for 3 amps. Obviously your ignition switch is rated for like 30 amps or 20 amps. It depends on what you're using. But that should be more than enough to switch over the solenoid. And because the solenoid is basically just like a big relay itself. So it's got much bigger juice running into it. It's really just trying to latch and deliver that 12 volts. So yeah, that's what you're doing here. I've got the relay wired up so that the ignition side, so true ignition, is going into this relay, and that's going to be delivered out of here when I push this button. So the next step is to just install the button in here, get the wires all connected, and God, I think I can start working on the gauges. That might be the next thing I'm going to work on because I really want to get everything behind the dash done first before I move to the extremities of the car. I do also need to drill holes in the firewall to start running wires out the passenger side and the center, because these big fat 1/0 cables are actually going to be going out of the trans tunnel, because I decided I'm going to build a center console in this thing, and that's going to hide all of the wires and protect them the entire length of the car. Well, I should say from the dash to the back seat. So tackle that when we get to it. So let's get this thing installed. Drill some holes. Guys, so it is time to go through the firewall. This can be a real pain in the ass depending upon your chassis. Lucky for us, with the S10 clip and just the position of the firewall and the relation to where the engine sits in here, you've actually got a fair amount of room at the firewall side, and there's room in the tunnel. So what's cool is like we're going to be able to pass everything through the tunnel itself, so I'm not going to have to go up and go to the vertical portion of the firewall. I can do the tunnel where it's at a little bit of an angle, and it'll really tuck the wires kind of out of sight. So what I'm going to be doing is using a couple of strain reliefs. So what a strain relief is it is a generally they're plastic. I think I've seen some of them in metal. The metal versions are usually used in household stuff, where you're coming in and out of like a sub panel or like your main panel. In automotive, a lot of times they're plastic,
And what's cool about these is that as you crank down the big nut, it seals. So there's a little rubber seal inside here, and this thing ratchets tighter and tighter, and it presses the seal against the wires that are running through. So in our case, we've got big, fat 1/0 cable that's going to be running through the firewall, and I needed a strain relief that was going to seal it and obviously provide strain relief big enough to do that. And they make them, which is kind of incredible. These things are pretty honking, pretty big. So I've got to drill a pair of holes on the tunnel to run those through. And then I've also got a bunch of other things that are going to go out the passenger side for things like the starter solenoid, the alternator switch, alternator turn on switch, switch wire, and then there's a few other things that are going to have to go out that side. So I've got to plan that out, but I think all those smaller diameter wires, we're just going to run through a little more tucked spot, I think. Whereas these guys are going to run right up the middle, and I think it's going to work out really nicely for kind of hiding along the side of the block to the starter. And then there's a spot on the back of the block that's super accessible, and I think we're just going to ground right to that spot. It's going to be like 6 to 8 inches of cable past the firewall right to the back of the engine. So that should be nice and clean. So you can get strain reliefs in a couple of different sizes. Of course, I've been tripping over them, and now I can't find them. I want to show you guys smaller versions of this. So we're going to be using those for a few other spots on the car. But first things first, let's get these huge holes drilled so that we can get these fat cables out of the inside of the car, and then worry about the other passenger side, and then go from there. I think the next step is actually getting into the engine bay and wiring up the headlights and taillights and stuff. So that's gonna be cool. Let's do this. One of my last steps here with the firewall. We've got all the big cables through now. We've got to run some of the smaller cables, and that's going to be for the passenger side, like I talked about earlier. So I'm going to use the same kind of strain relief with a seal in it, and we're just going to go ahead and pick this little pocket right here. It's like a little funny tab for holding on like the firewall blanket that goes on the inside of the car. Since I'm going to be doing something different than that, I'm just going to use that then for what I'm going to drill the hole out with. And then we're going to run the main power cable for the fuse block, the starter cable, and then the alternator exciter wire. And that should be everything for this side. So I'm going to do that right now.
guys, we are in the passenger kick panel, and we're talking about wires that are going to go through the firewall. Let's talk about these two big fat red wires. The one with the brown fusible link on it is going from the starter, so the lug on the starter, to the fat red wire that's coming out of your fuse block that has like a little plug on it, a little single plug. There is a male side. There is a male side of that so that you can attach it to this side of the cable, and they provide you with spades to do that. Now the other one, this guy is going to run from your alternator to your starter. And let's talk a little bit about fusible links. So a fusible link is just that. There isn't like a glass fuse, there isn't a ATC, there's just a cable, chunk of cable, a little bit of wire that will actually sever the connection if it sees a short or if there's too much juice running through it. You're gonna want to start on the starter side of this connection, because you're going to be attaching the spade on the other end. So start at the battery and work your way back. Alright guys, so we've got a Holley brand LS alternator pigtail. So you've got a 4-pin plug that's on the factory LS alternator, and there's a way to convert it so that it works just like a single, like the one wire style switched on alternator. So I think it's like a 3-wire or something like that. I can't remember. So yeah, really simple system. Do not clip it before this bulk piece, because apparently is where a resistor is. And this is just the switch on wire. So all you need is to connect this guy to your alternator ignition wire, and there you go. Very simple. Get ready if you order one of these. The packaging's a fucking nightmare. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and wire this in to the alternator ignition wire, and we'll get that in place, and then we'll move on to the other side of the engine bay, where I'm going to start doing like the turn signals and the headlights and stuff like that. Okay, so like we talked about earlier, the brake wires for the switch are going to come into the engine bay, because the switch is a pressure switch that comes off of the master cylinder. So in your case, you might be using a pedal switch that's hanging off like the big pedal arm. In that case, keep them inside. But these are all done. I just de-pinned the plug for the pressure switch, and then put new pins in so that we don't have any extra connections. And then the third brake light wire I spliced into your output wire from the switch, which really either is the output. I mean, once the circuit closes from the pressure switch, the switch closes, it doesn't matter which direction is which. But the harness gives you a dedicated input and output. So you don't have to get confused over that. So we're just going to loom this up, run it down, just going to hang it where it's going to go. We'll wait to plug it in until we're absolutely done with everything. But now this guy's completed, and then we can move on to the headlight and turn signal wires. Okay, I had a little bit of a surprise here. So originally I thought that I was going to have to figure out a way to install turn signals into the back of the car because these only had dual filament bulbs that were in them. And I thought, how am I going to run running lights, brake lights, and turn signals all in one if you only have two filaments? So what I did was I retrofitted some LEDs into the housings themselves, which you can see the other video that I did on this and how I went about fitting those in. So watch for that link, it should pop up above. And actually I don't need that. So what I discovered is that in this harness, if you use this particular column, the GM style column, the turn signals and brake lights are all managed internally, and the hazard lights are all managed internally inside of the column. So all the circuits are built in there somewhere. I don't know how they did it. I haven't seen the inside of it. That's why this is such a shocker to me. So I discovered this when I got back here and I realized that there is no specific brake light wire. There's a third brake light wire, like a third, like on a pickup, you've got your two normal taillights on the sides and you got the top of the cab. But in this case, there wasn't a third one, or there wasn't the brake light wires. And after hunting through the harness and trying to figure out what happened here, I traced it and it goes into the column. Come to find out, it's all handled in there. So that means that this system uses the turn signals to also deliver a brake light signal, meaning it's self-canceling. It's all internal of that column. Column handles sending the turn signal when the brake lights are applied. So you still have your pulsing. So I gotta make a phone call to Speedway and encourage them to put a little note in their instructions about that, because that would have been helpful to know. Might have saved me a little time. But I'm also thrilled at the idea that it's all handled inside of that column. Kind of a happy accident. So there's no changes that I need to worry about here, and I get to use these original lenses. The kicker is I'm going to repurpose these domed LEDs that I fit into the taillight housings. I'm going to use those for reverse lights. So for now, I'll have amber reverse lights, but later on this summer, after this car is running and driving and I've got time to mess with it, I'm going to put clear LEDs in there, and then it'll be an actual reverse light. It'll look correct. So all I got left is to make a couple of connections back here, and then we're going to move back up toward the front of the car to move on. All right. Sparky sparks? Nope. Okay.
I haven't gotten electrocuted, so that's good.
Inside. Okay. Well, she's just gonna rest on there. I guess I gotta open this up a little bit, but it's got juice. All right, let's check some stuff out.
Yeah, let's do this. I think we're ready. Now we've got the battery hooked up.
Okay, start plugging fuses in and see what happens. Okay.
At this point, we should have something light up, right?
I would think so.
Whoa.
Oh, we got headlights.
We do have headlights.
Okay. So we got no turn signals yet, but we also don't have the turn signal modules or whatever plugged in. So let's toss those in. Yay, headlights turned on, dude. Getting a little more excited.
Mm-hmm. We haven't had any sparks yet.
Nothing yet.
Oh, gauges light up.
Yep, we got gauges. Yep. Awesome! And check it out. Bam! Look at that. Look at that. That's so good. We just gotta get the right kind of turn signal. Blinky blinkers. God, I do not like that switch. I kind of want to test out turning the motor over, but like we know that the we got to double check that torque converter.
Yeah, just
so
to
we
be
probably
safe.
want to turn that over by hand. So we'll wait on that. Sweet, man. Okay, cool. Let's check a few more things, but I think we're almost done.